A young girl walks along a quiet street in South Lake Tahoe, California. It is June 10, 1991. She is 11 years old. Her name is J.C. Lee Duguid. She is on her way to catch the school bus. The morning appears routine. Within moments, that routine ends. A man and a woman approach in a gray sedan. Witnesses later report that the man uses a stun device. J.C. is forced into the vehicle. The car drives away quickly. In less than a minute, she disappears. If stories like this matter to you, consider subscribing, because what happens next reveals how this system truly works. Law enforcement responds immediately. The El Dorado County Sheriff's Office begins a search. Neighbors are questioned. A composite sketch is created. Early leads are limited. The description of the suspects is vague. The vehicle is not identified with certainty. Physical evidence is minimal. Investigators treat the case as an abduction by strangers. This classification narrows some possibilities but also limits early progress. In 1991, there is no widespread use of surveillance cameras. There is no DNA database capable of producing rapid matches in missing child cases. Information sharing across jurisdictions is slower than it becomes years later. The case gains national attention. J.C.'s photograph is distributed widely. Her name appears on missing persons lists. Her family participates in media appeals. Tips come in, but none lead to a confirmed location. Each lead requires time and verification. Most are ruled out. As weeks turn into months, the investigation expands. Authorities consider known offenders in the region. They review parole records. They re-interview witnesses. Still, no direct link is established. The suspects remain unidentified. Over time, the case begins to lose visibility. This is a common pattern in long-term missing person investigations. New cases emerge. Resources shift. The original urgency becomes difficult to sustain without new evidence. J.C.'s case is eventually classified as cold. This does not mean it is closed. It remains active in records and databases. But there are no active leads being pursued on a daily basis. Investigators continue to review the file periodically. Advances in forensic science offer some hope, but there is little physical evidence to retest. Her name is entered into national systems, including the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Age-progressed images are created. These images estimate what she might look like as she grows older. They are distributed to law enforcement agencies and the public. Years pass. The timeline stretches beyond a decade. In many cases like this, recovery becomes less likely as time increases. Investigators begin to consider multiple outcomes, including the possibility that the victim may not be alive. These assessments are based on statistical patterns, not specific evidence in this case. At the same time, parole systems across the United States manage thousands of offenders. Supervision levels vary. Compliance checks are conducted, but resources are limited. Not every individual under supervision is monitored continuously. Some offenders are required to register their address. Others are subject to periodic visits by parole officers. In California, individuals convicted of certain offenses must comply with strict conditions. These can include restrictions on contact with minors. Violations can result in rearrest. However, enforcement depends on accurate reporting and consistent oversight. By the early 2000s, J.C. Duguid's case remains unresolved. Her file is still accessible to investigators, but it is no longer at the forefront of active investigations. Her disappearance is one of many that remain unsolved. Meanwhile, the broader system continues to operate. Law enforcement agencies handle current cases. Parole officers manage caseloads. Administrative processes continue daily. In this environment, routine actions can carry unexpected consequences. Cold cases often depend on new information. This information can come from advances in technology, new witness statements, or unrelated investigations. In some instances, a small detail can trigger a re-examination of an old case. These moments are unpredictable. At this stage, there is no clear indication that J.C.'s case will be resolved soon. There are no confirmed sightings. There are no verified communications. The passage of time creates distance between the initial event and any potential discovery. Yet the case remains documented. Every report, every tip, every detail is preserved. This documentation allows investigators to revisit the case if new information emerges. It ensures that the case is not lost, even as years pass. In the United States, thousands of missing person cases remain open. Some are resolved quickly. Others remain unsolved for decades. The difference often comes down to evidence, timing, and chance. J.C. Duguid's case sits within this system. It is one file among many, but it carries its own history and significance. Her disappearance is not forgotten by those directly involved. Her family continues to seek answers. Law enforcement retains the case as an open investigation. At this point, there is no clear path forward. The suspects are still unidentified. The location of the victim is unknown. The case is stable, but inactive. In August 2009, an event occurs that is not directly connected to the original investigation. A parole officer in California conducts a routine compliance check. These checks are standard procedure. They are designed to ensure that individuals under supervision follow the conditions of their release. One of those individuals is Philip Garrido. He is a registered sex offender. He has a prior conviction for kidnapping and sexual assault. As part of his parole, he is subject to monitoring and restrictions. These include limits on contact with minors and requirements to report his activities accurately. During this period, Garrido is involved in organizing events at the University of California, Berkeley campus. He applies for permits to hold religious gatherings. These activities bring him into contact with university staff. On more than one occasion, he is accompanied by 2 young girls and a woman. Campus employees notice irregularities. The presence of children with a registered sex offender raises concern. Staff members report this behavior to campus police. This step follows standard protocol. When concerns involve potential violations of parole conditions, law enforcement is notified. University police initiate contact. They observe Garrido and the individuals with him. Their behavior appears unusual. The children are described as quiet and withdrawn. The adult woman does not present clear identification. These observations do not immediately confirm a crime, but they raise sufficient concern to continue the inquiry. Campus police contact Garrido's parole officer. This communication is critical. It connects the observation of suspicious behavior with an individual already under supervision. The parole officer is informed that Garrido has been seen in the company of minors. This detail is significant. Under the terms of his parole, Garrido is not permitted unsupervised contact with children. Any violation can trigger further investigation or detention. The report from campus police provides grounds for immediate follow-up. The parole officer arranges to meet Garrido. He is instructed to report to a parole office. Garrido complies. He arrives with the same adult woman and the 2 children previously observed. This compliance is not unusual. Individuals under supervision are required to respond to such directives. During the meeting, officers conduct standard questioning. They request identification. They ask about the relationship between Garrido and the individuals with him. The responses are inconsistent. The woman identifies herself as Alyssa. The children are described as her daughters. At this stage, officers note discrepancies. The woman appears unfamiliar with basic details that would normally be consistent in such a situation. Her demeanor is cautious. The children remain largely silent. These observations are recorded, but they are not yet conclusive. Law enforcement separates the individuals for further questioning. This is a standard investigative technique. It allows officers to compare responses and identify inconsistencies. During this process, the woman's statements begin to change. She eventually identifies herself as J.C. Lee Duguid. This statement shifts the entire investigation. Officers verify her identity through available records. The confirmation establishes that she is the same individual who was abducted in 1991. At this point, the case transitions from a long-term missing person investigation to an active criminal case. Garrido and his wife, Nancy Garrido, are taken into custody. The children are identified as Duguid's daughters. The discovery occurs without a direct link to the original case file. It is the result of a routine observation and a reported concern. The key factor is the recognition that Garrido's behavior does not align with the conditions of his parole. Following the identification, law enforcement executes a search of Garrido's residence in Anch, California. The property includes a main house and a concealed backyard area. Investigators document the site. They recover physical evidence. The layout of the property indicates long-term concealment. Authorities confirm that Duguid has been held at the location for approximately 18 years. This duration aligns with the timeline of her disappearance. The conditions of her captivity are documented through evidence and statements. The case draws national attention. It highlights several aspects of the criminal justice system. These include parole supervision, interagency communication, and the role of routine enforcement actions. Investigators review Garrido's history. They examine how he remained in the community under supervision. They analyze the frequency and effectiveness of parole checks. These reviews are conducted to understand how the situation persisted for so long. The initial breakthrough in the case is not the result of new forensic technology or a re-examined clue from 1991. It is the result of a current observation linked to an existing supervision system. A small detail, his presence with children, triggers a chain of events. This sequence demonstrates how cold cases can be resolved through indirect means. The original investigation does not produce a suspect. Instead, a separate process identifies behavior that leads to discovery. Following the arrests, prosecutors prepare charges. These include kidnapping and related offenses. The case moves into the judicial system. Duguid receives medical and psychological evaluation. Support services are provided. Law enforcement agencies coordinate to update records. The missing person case is officially resolved. Databases are amended to reflect her recovery. Notifications are sent to relevant organizations. The outcome is documented as a recovery after long-term abduction. It becomes one of the most well-known cases of its kind in the United States. The length of captivity and the circumstances of discovery are both noted in official records. The role of the parole officer and campus police is examined in detail. Their actions are reviewed as part of standard post-incident analysis. These reviews aim to identify strengths and weaknesses in existing procedures. The case also prompts discussion about supervision of registered offenders. Questions are raised about monitoring practices and resource allocation. These discussions occur within law enforcement and policymaking bodies. At the center of the case is the moment of recognition. A routine interaction leads to further questioning. A discrepancy is identified. A statement is made. The identity is confirmed. Following J.C. Duguid's recovery, law enforcement begins a comprehensive investigation into the circumstances of her captivity. Garrido and his wife, Nancy, remain in custody. Investigators focus on the period between 1991 and 2009. Their goal is to document what occurred, identify any additional offenses, and establish the chain of responsibility. Interviews are conducted with Duguid, her daughters, and others connected to the Garridos. Statements are carefully recorded. Investigators document her daily life in captivity, including how she was moved, confined, and controlled. The information provides insight into long-term abduction cases and offender behavior. Evidence from the property is catalogued. A concealed compound in Garrido's backyard reveals sleeping areas, storage for personal items, and other facilities. These spaces demonstrate premeditation and planning. Forensic teams collect items for analysis, including clothing, documents, and personal effects. Each item contributes to understanding the scope of the crime. The legal process begins quickly. Garrido is charged with multiple counts, including kidnapping, sexual assault, and false imprisonment. Nancy Garrido is charged as an accomplice. The judicial system prepares for trial. Prosecutors review the entirety of the evidence, including the details of the 1991 disappearance, the surveillance and observation in 2009, and the physical evidence recovered from the property. Duguid's testimony, alongside physical evidence and corroborating statements, forms the basis of the prosecution. The case emphasizes factual reporting and precise chronology. Legal filings document every element of the crime, including the initial abduction, the conditions of captivity, and the eventual recovery. The case also prompts internal review within law enforcement agencies. Parole supervision practices are examined. Communication between local police, campus authorities, and parole officers is evaluated. Agencies consider how routine procedures might be enhanced to identify irregularities sooner. These analyses aim to prevent similar oversights in future cases. During the investigation, Duguid's daughters undergo psychological evaluation. Professionals document the effects of long-term captivity on child development. Support systems are established to provide counseling, education, and stability. These interventions are essential for the immediate and long-term welfare of the children. The discovery and investigation reveal broader systemic insights. A key factor in the resolution of the case is the small detail observed by campus police, an adult sex offender in the company of minors. This observation, followed by proper communication with parole authorities, triggers the chain of events that leads to discovery. The case becomes a reference point for law enforcement and criminal justice professionals. Training materials, reports, and academic studies analyze the timeline, the failure points, and the eventual breakthrough. The lessons highlight the importance of careful observation, interagency communication, and adherence to standard supervision protocols. Media coverage follows closely. Journalists report on the length of captivity, the conditions at the Garrido property, and the eventual rescue. Coverage is factual, focused on verified events, and grounded in official statements. Reports emphasize the role of routine procedures rather than dramatic intervention. Law enforcement continues to monitor similar parolees in the region. The case informs updates to risk assessment protocols, compliance checks, and reporting requirements. Training emphasizes the need to note irregular behaviors, even when no immediate crime is confirmed. For Duguid and her family, the focus is recovery. Public attention is significant, but support services prioritize mental health, reintegration, and personal safety. The process of adjusting to normal life is gradual and structured. Legal proceedings conclude with convictions. Garrido receives a life sentence without parole. Nancy Garrido is also sentenced to long-term imprisonment. The judicial outcome reflects the severity of the crimes, the extended duration of captivity, and the impact on the victims. The resolution of the case provides closure. The missing person status is lifted. Investigators document the complete timeline from abduction to recovery. Official records are updated to reflect the confirmed outcome. This case is widely studied in criminal justice programs. It illustrates how small, seemingly routine details can have major consequences. Observations during everyday enforcement actions become the critical link in solving a long-standing case. It also demonstrates the resilience of investigative systems. Even after nearly 2 decades, accurate record-keeping, persistent documentation, and standard protocols allow for successful resolution. The discovery of J.C. Duguid and the investigation that follows underline the importance of diligence in both missing persons and parole supervision cases. They reveal how interconnected systems can work effectively when procedures are properly followed. After the convictions, attention turns to the broader implications of the case. Law enforcement agencies analyze the events to identify lessons that can improve public safety and oversight of parolees. Reports emphasize that while advances in technology and databases are important, basic observation and adherence to protocol are equally critical. Agencies review the monitoring of sex offenders in California and nationwide. Policies are examined regarding the frequency of compliance checks, reporting requirements, and interagency communication. The goal is to prevent similar situations where a dangerous offender remains undetected for an extended period. The case highlights the importance of coordination between local law enforcement, campus security, and parole officers. Each entity plays a role in the system, and communication gaps can have significant consequences. Following the resolution, formal recommendations are issued to improve information sharing and response procedures. Duguid's recovery also underscores the need for specialized support for long-term abduction victims. Psychological and social services are critical to reintegration. Professionals provide counseling, education support, and life skills training to address the complex effects of extended captivity. Academic studies and law enforcement seminars reference the case. It is analyzed in terms of offender behavior, risk management, and criminal justice procedures. In particular, it demonstrates how meticulous documentation, combined with routine oversight, can eventually lead to breakthroughs even in decades-old cases. For the public, the case serves as a reminder of the realities of long-term missing person investigations. Media coverage focuses on verified facts: the initial abduction, the period of captivity, the routine observation that triggered discovery, and the resulting convictions. Sensationalized reporting is avoided in professional analyses, emphasizing grounded, factual presentation. The key factor in the case remains the small but critical detail: a registered sex offender observed with children in a setting inconsistent with his parole conditions. That observation, followed by proper reporting and verification, leads to the rescue of Duguid and the arrest of her captors. Legal reviews and after-action reports stress that cases do not always resolve through extraordinary measures. Often, resolution comes from consistent application of standard procedures, attention to detail, and effective communication between multiple agencies. In the aftermath, Duguid and her family work to rebuild their lives. The judicial outcome provides a measure of closure, but recovery is ongoing. Support networks and counseling continue to play a central role in her reintegration. The case leaves a lasting impression on law enforcement practices. Policies are adjusted, risk assessments are refined, and training emphasizes the value of routine vigilance. These changes reflect a commitment to improving the monitoring and supervision of high-risk individuals. Ultimately, The discovery of J.C. Duguid illustrates how the criminal justice system can resolve even the most prolonged and complex cases. It demonstrates that careful observation, procedural diligence, and effective communication can bring long-awaited resolution to cases once considered cold. The narrative reinforces that no case is ever truly closed until every detail has been examined and every lead has been pursued. It also shows the crucial role that seemingly small observations can play in uncovering the truth. Even decades later, the resolution of J.C. Duguid's case stands as an example of the importance of vigilance, interagency collaboration, and the persistence of law enforcement in seeking justice. If you think this story was intense, the next one will leave you speechless. Subscribe for more true crime stories that'll keep you on the edge of your seat.